Well, we've got Mr. Johnny Bash here, who's quickly establishing himself as one of the most vital young voices in music. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing smashing today. So, how would you describe the overall style of your music?
Basically, what I'm trying to do right now with my music and my artistry is I'm mixing punk rock from the 70s. So, Sex Pistols, The Clash, Ramones, all the good stuff. And I'm mixing that with like 80s, 90s style of hip hop, like Eric B. and Rakim, Special Ed, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg. So, a lot of like West Coast meets East Coast, and just kind of like combining those two things. And it's like the instrumentals that I create are more on the punk rock side, and then the flow and the type of delivery is inspired by the MCs from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and it's an interesting mix, but it seems to work quite well, doesn't it?
I would like to think so. I would hope so. I hope people like it.
What gave you the idea to mix these two? I suppose there are similarities, but they're different genres.
Yeah, so I think like what inspired me to want to do that was like growing up was kind of like that's when I was introduced to that style of music with
Mm.
the hip hop from the 80s and 90s because my dad was a break dancer and my uncle was a DJ, and they both have had like a big impact on me and the type of music that I listen to now as an adult. And as I got older, I found punk rock on my own. So it's kind of like my own thing that I found, and like nobody else really helped me out with that. So like that was
Yeah.
something I felt like kind of established my own independency as an artist. So
Mm.
it's kind of just like being true to myself with punk rock and being like very aggressive and very in your face, but also like with some style and class. And that's
Yeah.
kind of paying homage to like the people that inspired me like growing up, like my dad and my uncle.
Yeah. And do you think that punk and hip hop kind of suit each other because although they're different musically, they're similar in the way that they had this big breakthrough at the same time, and they're often a little bit rougher around the edges sometimes, and they're sort of protesty as well sometimes. There's some similarities there, aren't there?
I couldn't agree with you more because like I don't really see any differences between Public Enemy, Chuck D, rapping about like politics and kind of like giving the message of like power to the people.
Yeah.
I don't really see any difference between that and the Sex Pistols protesting on a boat against the Queen, like literally getting arrested for it, like
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Like, and both are very aggressive, both are very in your face, both are very like, I would say that both are kind of like the genres that are, that's like the voice of the people. And like, because me, like, I'm just like a dude, you know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not really trying to like, I mean, I do want to spread a message and I do want to make change. Like, that's what I really want to do. But it's just like, I'm just like one person, and I think
Mm.
both genres of music, of being like punk rock and hip hop, encapsulate that idea that like one person can make a difference. Like we can make changes in like our systems that are corrupt and that are screwed up.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, your new EP is called Mr. Johnny Bash is a Dope MC. How would you describe that overall?
Yeah, I would describe that as being like more an homage to like the Beastie Boys
Mm.
and like the 80s, like 90s kind of like punk rock hip hop movement with like that. Cause I watched their documentary and I was feeling like super inspired by them. And as
Yeah.
well as a lot of like aggressive type of beats, like except for one of the songs, but the majority of it is very like in your face and aggressive because like that's the sound. I wanted like a really distorted sound. Like I wanted something that sounded like bad, but it sounded like it was meant to sound like that. The production's not like, super like squeaky clean because that's just who I am as a person. Like that's where I was at when I made it.
Yeah. And I notice on Spotify that all the songs are explicit. Do you have a lot of energy in your music, to put it that way?
That's interesting that you point that out because like nobody has yet. And it's funny because if you really listen to those songs, like there's really not that much explicitive language.
Yeah.
Like I did that, and it's like the song Trial doesn't have any explicit language. Like it doesn't really have anything like alluding to anything like that could be explicit, I guess.
Mm.
Maybe if you like interpreted the lyrics in a certain way. But I think like my choice in doing that artistically was kind of like to prove a point that like
Yeah.
kind of like somebody as yourself will notice those things, but most people won't even care enough to
Mm.
realize that there's no cussing, right? They'll just be so distracted by the delivery in the style of music that they'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes sense. You know, they're not going to actually see past like the what's on the surface.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I suppose I tend to notice it because I've got to edit stuff before I play it on the radio.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And what's the inspiration behind the final track on the EP, We're Living in 1984? Because that seems to be a thing that's sort of said by lots of people about many different things, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's a song I was talking to my cousin. His name is Andre. We were talking like on the phone, and he's actually the person who I'm talking to at the end of that song.
Oh.
He gave me the idea for that. As we were just like having one of our like 4 hour phone conversations, you know, because me and him get along super well, and like we're just talking about like how the government is surveilling us now, and like you just really, it's kind of like the same idea as Every Breath You Take by the Police, where like you just like you can't move, you know, like you can't do anything without being surveyed, and it's scary. And like that's why the song is very in your face and like very like hardcore, but at the end like I have that conversation to distract from the fact of what you just heard is like irrelevant, because that's what you're going to be left with, you know, like you're not even going to grasp the message because you're so distracted by like this little phone skit that's kind of like seemingly like, you know, just like silly, and it like kind of just has like a more lighthearted tone, but it's not a lighthearted song, you know?
Yeah, I suppose it's something that we don't tend to think about much, or maybe we don't like to think about. But yeah, I suppose in this modern era, we are living in 1984.
We really are. It's scary, but you know, we can try to be better. That's like literally the only thing we can do.
Do you think in the future you might mix more genres in, or have you found your groove with punk and hip hop?
I think like I would be interested if I had the means to do that. Like I would really like
Yeah.
to start sampling, but you know, like I'm broke, so like I can't afford sampling rights to
Oh
like
yeah.
songs that would literally cost like millions of dollars just to take like one little thing, which I have other feelings on. But like I think because I've found my sound so strongly, I think I just want to go like straight into punk rock, because like I honestly feel like it's kind of dead. I mean, we have
Yeah.
like pop punk, you know, like which I don't really care for, if I'm being honest. Like, you know, like because a lot of artists don't really respect punk music as an art form. Like
Yeah.
they just kind of like go with what's mainstream and what people are gonna like. And you know, it's like to each their own, I guess. That's just kind of how I feel about it. But
Yeah.
I think I like really want to dive into just like straight up classic punk rock, like you know, like Bad Brains and like Suicidal Tendencies, and like the really like hardcore stuff. Because I think like where I'm at personally in my life is like I'm in a really good place right now. You know, I just started like dating the woman of my dreams, who's literally like to my right now, drawing like
Oh,
something so beautiful for like our next album art. Like that she
nice.
has a feature on my next album, you know, so she's doing that. And like I'm just really happy, you know. It's like I want to make punk music, but like kind of like the Ramones, where like it's like makes you just kind of want to like dance and have a good time, you know.
So you're both up at this time in the morning.
Yeah. This is she always calls it the witching hour. This is like when the real feelings come out, you know.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of people will tell you that I don't think punk was really as big as you might think it would have been in the 70s, because there weren't really that many hits compared to other genres. I think a lot of the popularity of punk has sort of came about later. Maybe newer generations have discovered all this stuff after it came out.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that too, because like I agree. I think punk was more obscure,
Yeah.
but it's so like crazy when you really look at how like punk music influenced like new wave music and like Joy Division and
Yeah.
like all like the like Talking Heads, like all the really great trying to B-52s as well.
Oh yeah.
Like those bands like were all super punk, you know, like I mean even if like they weren't straight up punk bands, they definitely had that influence. So
Oh
like
yeah.
to see a genre that wasn't really popular, like literally so much music around that time was shaped by that attitude and like that DIY kind of like punk mentality.
Yeah. So what first got you interested in making music in the first place? I mean, was it these two genres, or did it start completely differently?
Yeah, so basically, like I started doing theater in high school, and I loved being on stage. You know, like I loved it. I sucked at singing, honestly. Like when I was 14, but I worked at it. Like I worked super hard, and you know, I ended up getting like leads in every single musical I was in, because like I just worked so hard day and night. Every single like I would run on the treadmill and I would sing at the same time to like get my
Wow.
like breath control. And then I started doing choir, you know, and I found like a lot of strength in singing too. And then by the time I was in like community college, I continued doing theater, but then I kind of like, then I started learning how to play the piano because I always kind of wanted to just learn it. And the
Yeah.
first song was This Is Gospel by Panic at the Disco. I just kind of watched a YouTube video and taught myself because I understood like notes and stuff because of choir. Like I was like, I know what an E, a G, every good bird does fly or whatever, you know, like that
Yeah.
made sense to me. But like, I think once I started like really figuring out that like music was something I really wanted to do, like I just like went headfirst into it. And like I always have that like kind of theater flair, I guess. Like I want to be theatrical, like I want to be like grandiose, but I think now what I'm trying to do is like personalize it. So it's like that, like I told you kind of earlier with like honoring my family, like
Yeah.
honoring like the craft in which I fell in love with first and using that to drive me to become a stronger artist through everything.
And it's interesting because I suppose with punk, you don't necessarily need to be a great singer, do you? So was that effort that you put into learning to sing worth it in the end?
That's an amazing question, honestly. I'll put it like this. I, you know, I've had so many people try to tear me down and
Yeah.
so many people try to make fun of me for the way I sing and always trying new things. And to me, like punk is like a middle finger to those people being like, oh, okay, well, you know, you want to talk like all that smack to me, like watch me, you know,
Yeah.
watch me do this. Like I'm so good at singing that I know how to sound like I don't know how to sing, you know? So
Yeah.
like I think to answer your question, and sorry, that sounded super narcissistic, but like it's just how I feel. Like I've been through a lot, man. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like that's by going through all that adversity, like I just found my sound, you know, like that
Yeah.
aggressive, angry, like super like pissed off. Like I like sounding messy, like because like basically I started like singing Frank Sinatra and like Johnny Cash, you know, it's like where Johnny Bash came from. And
Yeah.
like
Oh.
through doing all of that, like all of that kind of like work, I would always like I never like really felt it. But when I started like doing like punk rock and started like freestyling over hip hop beats, like I found confidence and I found something I really, really loved. So I just wanted to explore that and just go even further and just keep going. And even like today, I just like before, you know, this interview, I was freestyling for my girlfriend for like probably like 20 minutes uninterrupted, you know?
Well,
Like I was just going crazy because like I just have so many listens, you know, it's awesome, dude.
yeah. And you've got an upcoming album, haven't you? What's it called?
So it's in all caps, don't mess with Julio with an exclamation mark at the end.
Wow. And what can we expect from it?
Something insane. Like I don't want to say too much, you know, I
Yeah.
want to leave a little mystery, but like
Mm.
literally just like from track to track, you're just gonna be like, what is going on? Like, is this
Yeah.
guy okay? Like, what is wrong with this guy? Like that's what I want people to feel.
How many tracks are going to be on the album?
It's like a classic punk album, so it's like 8, and it's pretty
Yeah.
short. It's only like 14 minutes, but in those 14 minutes is just like the best lyrics I've ever written in my life.
Yeah. Looking forward to that. And do you have any more plans after that album, or are you just going to wait and see how it goes?
So yeah, I basically like I'm moving out to San Francisco soon.
Ooh.
So I live in San Jose right now, you know, in the Bay Area. And like I want to just like embrace and kind of soak up all of the like artistic energy that city has to offer, like with my girlfriend and moving in with her and just
Yeah.
like create art together. So right now I honestly feel pretty satisfied with everything that I've created. I definitely want to go further because like I want to end up touring and like, you know, I just like I want to be super famous and like super well known. It's like I'm working so hard to get there too, you
Mm.
know? And so right now my plans are to just kind of like move in, you know, I just got a new job, so kind of like get my footing there and like kind of get stable financially while at the same time working on more content. So I don't really have any plans past this new album that I just made. Like at the moment, I've been kind of writing stuff here and there, but I just kind of want to go with the flow right now because I've never really done that before. I've always just been kind of like high strung, like, oh, this needs to happen this way and that way. And for
Yeah.
the first time in my life, I wake up, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen today. And I love it, you know?
Mm. Yeah, that's an exciting way of life, but for some people, they don't like the uncertainty.
Yeah, I think people don't like uncertainty because people are scared of change.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I love change. I'm like, bring it on. I love an exciting. I don't want a boring life. I don't. That's why I'm an artist. Like I want to live an exciting. I would rather be like dirt broke, poor, like living on the street and like making good music than being like super rich and having like no ideas.
That's true. Well, where can we find all your music everywhere?
Basically, like every streaming service, like the main one I'm really pushing is Spotify because that's how I listen to music. It's
Yeah.
like my favorite streaming platform just because it has so much interaction, like with radio
Yeah.
stations and like
Oh, yeah.
just like personalized playlists. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get on their playlists. Like I think I just need to like just work as hard as I can because that's the goal. The goal is to get on those big playlists, get like a bunch of followers, and then just eventually turn this into my career, which I'm like really trying to do. So like Spotify, Apple Music, the other ones, like I honestly don't even know.
YouTube, that's one, isn't it?
Yeah, YouTube Music, you can listen there, like
Yeah.
Amazon, iHeartRadio.
Excellent. Well, many thanks for joining us on the show today. It's been great to have you here.
Likewise, it was really nice meeting you, man. I look forward to talking to you again in the future.